We are going to be talking all about real estate agent profitability. You and I both know that there are endless amount of offers out there to help you to earn more money, but how many of those are really also teaching you how to keep more of your money? The real estate industry is famous for making lots of money and keeping very little of it. In today's episode, we're going to get into depth onto 5 simple numbers that you should be watching in order to be sure that you are a profitable real estate agent, not just a top producing real estate professional. I have with me a very special guest who's going to help us do that. Stay with us, guys. This show is going to be fantastic. The big question is this: how do those of us in the real estate industry with crazy amounts of ambition, how do we think bigger than the building of our own empires? How do we simultaneously seek success and significance, income and impact? My name is Justin Stoddard, and this is the Think Bigger Real Estate Show. All right, guys, welcome back to the show. Excited to be with you today. Happy President's Day for those of you that are watching live. And I will also put this in, if by chance you are interested in getting some real-time feedback on today's episode, be sure and put in the chat. We will see that. We'll answer the questions of those of you that are watching live. If you're listening to the podcast afterwards, be sure and connect with me. You can find me on Instagram at Justin Stoddard, and I'll be happy to answer your questions, even connect you to today's guest. And/or if by chance you are wanting to go deeper on this topic and others, I'd encourage you to be sure and join the Facebook group, Think Bigger Real Estate, where again, we connect you to the guests. We connect you to the information you need to actually apply what's learned today. Today's guest was a former high producing agent, team leader out of Minnesota, had a great business. At least it looked that way from the outside, and realized that profitability was struggling. He figured that out. And now he shares that with other agents. Andy Mulholland, such a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thanks, Justin. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, nice to have you here. So again, you've been in the seat of a top producer, right? Who maybe wasn't a top producer at home, right? Top producer to the office. You get home and there's maybe like a lesser producer feel. Is that safe to say?
Oh, well, for sure. I mean, I remember specifically being on stage at an event a few years after I got started in real estate, and I was a top producer in the RE/MAX kind of brokerage that we were in our area in Minnesota. And people were saying like, wow, what a great business you have. And then back in my mind, I'm thinking, if they only knew, right? If they only knew. I had a small team at the time. I was doing more deals, making less money, and not seeing my family as much.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking, what am I doing? And so that's where I kind of woke up and realized that if I'm going to build this like a real business, I've got to treat the financials the same way.
Yeah, I love it. And all too often, in fact, I was having conversations with a group of title reps that I coach. And I told them, I said, there's a difference between people who are real estate salespeople and real estate business owners. And if you want to really be valuable as a title rep, is figure out how to help them make that transition, that switch. So I'm excited for that group that I coach, as well as the group of real estate agents that I coach today, to really tap into a very simple way, 5 simple numbers as you share it, right? Of what numbers you should be tracking that will really lead you to profitability. But let me, even before we delve into that, let me just say, I love what you're saying, because at Think Bigger Real Estate, our aim and our mission is not just to help people build bigger empires that look good on the outside, but actually to have success and significance. In other words, have a very successful business and still be significant at home. Actually still have more time for your family and more time for investing in things that can create passive income. So we're absolutely kind of walking down the same path. So Andy, walk us through what that looks like. What should real estate agents be tracking, and kind of help us start on that path?
Yeah, well, I mean, I tell you, the biggest mistake that I made, and I see so many make now, is that they don't track, right? And that's number one. And I think it all comes down to how they view their financial statements. Most view it as a function of taxes, right? It's like, I got to do books so that I can file taxes. And I have my CPA do my books, and their whole job is to decrease my tax liability by suggesting all these things or things that I can or cannot run through my business to decrease that tax liability. The problem is, when we only look at it through the lens of the IRS or our CPA, we miss what I would consider to be the majority of the value out of our books, which is it's a report card for the financial health of our business. And unless we simplify them, they don't make any sense to us. At least they didn't for me, and I just avoided them. And so I think that's the biggest mistake, is either we don't do them all together, or they're so complicated and just kind of convoluted with all this stuff that we just ignore them. because they frustrate us and overwhelm us. And that's, I guess, what I'd like to help people understand a little bit better today is how can they take those complicated statements, break them down into what we call the 5 simple numbers so that they can make better business decisions from them.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's not, it is common for real estate agents to actually not keep any books at all, but probably more common is that because they've had to do that, right, to file taxes, et cetera, they don't actually use them as a directive on how to run their business, right? It's simply looking in the rearview mirror as opposed to using them as a powerful directive tool on maybe what changes can be made and how to improve the business. So excited to learn from you. Kind of start walking us through those steps, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I mean, the first number that we've got to make sure we have is our real revenue, or I should say our total revenue. And that is the actual top line revenue that comes into our business. I see this as probably one of the bigger mistakes I see in how CPAs set up real estate agents' books, and that they will just enter the revenue, the amount that the agent actually received after the broker took their portion. And oftentimes if they have a team, which is a lot of the clients we work with, after they paid their agents their portion of the split. And then they only look at what's left as their revenue. And we need to look at the total revenue. Because if you think about it, why do you pay your brokerage? Because they provide value to you. We need to understand how much that value we're getting is actually costing us. Same with our agents. If we're going to pay agents to do a portion of the sale, then we need to make sure how much that is costing us. It's bringing us value. It's allowing us to be at home more with our family. It's allowing us to build the business and spend more time working on the business. What's it costing us? So if we don't track the true top line revenue, then I think we're missing understanding a portion of the health of our business. So that's simple number one. Make sure that you, if you're doing your books or your CPA, is accounting for the true total revenue. Now, in today's world, I know that profit share, revenue share, some of that stuff is a new thing and not necessarily a brand new thing, but something that's taking on. We need to make sure that if we are getting profit share, revenue share, other types of revenue, that we're not looking at that as revenue to our real estate business. In our opinion, that is a separate business. It can really skew our margins to helping us understand if we have a healthy business or not, if we're adding all this extra outside revenue. So make sure that we have total revenue, and it really is truly the total revenue before anybody takes any portion of it.
So do you recommend a separate set of books for the revenue share business, or you're just saying at least itemize it out so that you can separate it?
It really depends on how big those businesses are, right? So for some of our clients, they've got really big real estate teams, $5-6 million in GCI, and then they've got a huge amount of revenue or profit share on the side as well. We really want to separate those out. Sometimes what we can do, though, is just at the very bottom of a profit and loss statement, show that as other income.
Okay.
Right? And we can talk more about that, but like we just want to make sure that it is itemized out. We could also do it in a way where we have indirect or direct income. We can kind of separate it out that way. But the point is, you definitely got to make sure you know, if I'm running a real estate business over here, what is the true total revenue before anybody took any portion of that from that real estate sales business? So that's simple number one.
Love it. Love it.
The second one, then, of course, is what is called the cost of goods sold, or the cost of sale, right? I like to also call this, for the world of real estate, the cost of services provided. In other words, what was the direct cost associated with providing the service? So very simply, what did you have to pay your broker and your agents if you have splits with them? That is essentially what your cost of goods sold is. Maybe if you're a larger team and you have inside sales agents or some of those other things, we could consider that cost of goods sold. But for the majority of people, if you're paying any portion of a closing out to someone else, that is a cost of goods sold. It's usually the broker, might be your agent on your team, or it might be a referral fee to an outside agent that sent you that deal. But we just need to know what that amount is, because if it's too high, it could be really hard to have enough money left over to pay your bills and still be profitable. And so that's why we need to make sure we're not paying out too much to those things.
I think that's
number two.
I think that's a really great distinction as far as of what cost of goods is in a service-based business, right? So that's super helpful. All right, take us to point number 3.
Yeah, I mean, number 3 is just what's left. Now we call that gross profit. This is where most people start. They start looking at that number, as I mentioned before, because they don't account for the amount they paid their agents and broker. But the gross profit is just simply your total revenue minus your cost of goods sold is now what you have left to work with. And that is, also called real revenue. Some people refer to it as real revenue. But that's the money you have to now work with. And so that's simple number 3, very simply, it's just a mathematical equation.
Which is just simply your total revenue, right? Minus your cost of goods sold.
Right. Very simple. Yeah.
Real revenue. Love it. Okay.
Real revenue. That's number 3. And then number 4 is your operating expenses. Now, what do you have to spend to run the business? And so I like to break down operating expenses into only 3 categories. We've got to keep this simple. We cannot overcomplicate this if we're going to get value out of this stuff. Your CPA may want to have a million different categories, and we can have a lot of subcategories, but the main 3 categories around operating expenses should be lead gen and marketing, people expenses, and then overhead. So any dollar you spend with the intent of trying to generate a new opportunity for your business is a lead gen marketing dollar.
Great.
And we need to know how much that is. Then we need to look at, like I said, number 2, people. What are your staff expenses if you have any? If you have an assistant or a showing partner possibly, or whoever it is that you might have in place, what are those people expenses? And then 3rd would be overhead, and simply that is any dollar spent that isn't a people expense or a lead gen marketing expense. And so we need to know those 3 categories and really understand if we're spending the right amount in those 3 in our operating expenses. And that leaves us with simple number 5, which is your net profit.
Yeah.
That's it. It's really that simple. And so making sure that our profit and loss statement, our chart of accounts, is set up to reflect those 5 simple numbers. It makes it very easy every month, quarter, and year to go in and look at those main 5 categories and know if we are on or off track. Now, it's one thing to track them. It's another thing to have a model that you're working towards. And so that's kind of the second biggest mistake I see people make, is not tracking or overcomplicating it so we ignore it. And then secondly, not knowing what we're trying to build, right? The old thing from Jim Collins, begin with the end in mind. What is the economic model we're trying to build? And then looking at it every week, month, quarter, and year to see if we're on or off track. And it really should be that simple to make sure that we're building what we want. The last thing you want to do is build a business that I had, where I remember the year I woke up, I had done a little over 100 deals personally myself, 800,000 in GCI for my personal production, and my business lost $200,000 because we only made 600 grand in net profit.
Wow.
So I was essentially donating $200,000 that could be going to my family and building my life. And I was saying, here you go, agents, here's $200,000 of my revenue to sell houses, for you guys can sell houses. And that is not a business, that's a charity. Mm-hmm. And it was because I had the wrong splits and I was spending too much money in those 3 categories. Mm-hmm. So what model are we trying to build?
And that's eye-opening, right? Because for essentially a solo agent, right? Now you must have had a small team, but you're saying your personal production was over 100 homes, mm-hmm. and you were still losing $200,000 because who were these other agents? Because you had other teammates.
I had 2 other agents, and I think at that point 2 admin.
Okay.
But we only netted 600,000. So essentially, I would have been better off staying an individual, just an individual agent with an admin.
Yeah.
Because as soon as I brought on agents, I had to spend more money in my mind to keep them happy, and I had to pay them a split, and my splits were off. So all of a sudden, I woke up and I was making $200,000 less each year, but I had a team and I was on stage at the end of the year conference. Right. And so it dawned on me that I didn't have the model I was hoping to build here.
So I'd love to hear, and maybe you've created this, maybe this is something that we send people to you, but looking at, I know inside of the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, right, the red book, they give specific kind of industry norms as far as what you should be spending on marketing, what you should be spending on these different categories. feel free to share that, or if that's something that's more of a private conversation, we're happy to.
No, not at all. The only thing I don't want to do is make people think there is a right or wrong way to do this. The key is that you know what the model is that you want to build. For me, here's what I wanted. I wanted two things. I wanted at least 30 to 35% net profit, and I wanted to sell 0 houses myself. If I could accomplish those two things, I was able to accomplish what I wanted to with my life, which is make sure for me, I'm a Christian. The Bible verse that comes to mind is Mark 8, that says, what does it profit a man to lose or to gain the whole world, lose his soul, right? Like, I didn't want to do that. Yeah. And so it was worth it to me to make a 35% net profit and have true total freedom in my life. And so the model I ran was a third, which means 30 to 35% cost of goods sold, 30 to 35% expenses, which left me with 30 to 35% net profit, no owner pay.
Nice.
Right. And so if we have our splits correct, we can do that on the cost of goods sold. For me, I spent 10% in each category, 10% on lead gen marketing, 10% on people, 10% on overhead, which got me to that 30%. And it left me at 30%. So I did the third model. It's not the only way to do it, but it was the model that I chose, and I think that's the key, is that you are clear on the model you want to build before you start building it.
Yeah, I think that's great. All too often, people have their ladder up against a wall that other agents in their office have their ladder up against, and they get partway up and they're like, "This is the life I want," right? To your point, whether it be for family, for spiritual reasons, to decide in advance what is actually the life that I want to create, and what is the model that's consistent with that. It's awesome. Talk us through how people work with you, or how can they continue to learn from you? I think you've simplified some things, and I'm always a fan of being in business people who can take what would otherwise be complicated and simplify it. So walk us through how people get in contact with you.
Well, there's a tool that may be helpful to people. We have found it to be helpful with the clients we work with. I offer it for free on our site. It's just the 5-minute budget. So if they go to the number 5, MIN budget.com, it's just a free download with a 20-minute training video that I'll show them how to fill it out. And essentially, they should walk away at the end of that 20 minutes with the model that they're trying to build.
Love it.
It lays it out as an annual budget, as well as it breaks it down into the quarterly numbers and monthly numbers, so that they can each month look at that and compare it to their profit and loss statement. If they need help with bookkeeping, or they actually need someone to do bookkeeping for them who understands real estate, that's where we can help. That is the service we provide. Awesome. They can hire us for about the same or less than it would be to hire a CPA to do their books, or just a part-time bookkeeper, but we can do it for them and provide that value of understanding the business intimately. And so they can go to simple-numbers.com and learn more. There's a lot of videos, as well as ask for a quote for their business as well.
Simple-numbers.com. I love it. Correct. Super simple. Andy, I want to ask you this kind of one more question here before we wrap up, which is you're a big thinker, right? You've obviously produced in real estate at some of the highest levels, also had a kind of reconciliation moment where it was like, okay, this is not the life that I want. I'm doing something wrong here. Figured it out, and then realized I want to give back to other people, right? I want to have other real estate agents see the light that you don't have to be office rich and home broke, right? You can actually experience true wealth. So what is it that a guy like you does to continue to be a big thinker, to continue to expand your possibilities? What does that look like for you?
Boy, I guess it's challenge the status quo everywhere, right? Be clear on what is truly important for you. And for me, it's my faith and my family, right? For me, I don't want to, I'm very clear that we all die, right? We don't make it off this earth alive. It just is going to happen. What truly is going to be important? For me, it's making sure that I teach my kids a faith that, is so important to me. And so how do I do that? Well, I make sure that I've got that freedom, and that comes through profitability. And so challenging the status quo. Why do we have to do things the way they've always been done? And how can I do them differently? For example, I carry a flip phone. I don't have a smartphone. And I hear people say, there's no way I could run my life without a smartphone. I ran a multi-million-dollar real estate team. I run other companies, and I run them all off of a smartphone. It's a choice. I challenge the status quo that we have to have those things in order to be successful. And so it's just, I would say things like that allows me to live a life that maybe some people would call different. It's just choices and constantly challenging the way that we think we have to live.
It's beautiful, man. I love it. We have a lot in common when it comes to faith and family. Great stuff. Thank you so much for sharing today. Again, if anybody here is realizing that maybe you need to take a look at your budget, take a look at your profitability. Andy's a great guy to go to. Again, he's produced at the highest levels to where he can share with you not only templates and formulas, and even offer help to help you get your numbers aligned. We can also share with you some concepts of the models that he's utilizing in his business, has used in his businesses, that will allow you to truly be not just successful, but significant. And for those that are new to the show, that's exactly what this show is about. It's not just about success, it's about success and significance. And to do that, you have to have some things in place like Andy's outlined here today. So appreciate it all very much. For those of you that are listening live, I want to make you aware really quickly that we do have a referral workshop coming up that is showing up on your screen right now as a QR code. Would encourage you to sign up for that. It's going to be a between 3 to 4 hour deep dive on how to increase your referrals from your sphere, from social media, and from professional partners, which is my specialty. And having your business in order, as Andy will help you to do so, will only make you more attractive to those professional partners like CPAs, like financial advisors who would want to send you business. So be sure and join us this coming Wednesday for that. And Andy, such a pleasure to have you here on the show today. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing us, really simplifying what should be simplified, right? Which is the very important language of business, which is the accounting and bookkeeping side. So appreciate it very much, my friend.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, great to be here.
And my final request to everybody listening here today are these 3 simple words. They are go think bigger. Andy, thanks for helping us do that today, my friend.
You bet.
Be honest, hearing good ideas is not enough. You have to apply them in order to get the results desired. If you found value in today's episode, then you're really going to love the community of big thinkers and high achievers that we are building in order to help you to apply the principles taught today. If you're not yet a member of Think Bigger Real Estate on Facebook, go sign up now.